Welcome back to Gem and Cozy, you guys. I think I'm slightly under the weather. I woke up feeling a little bit stuffy today and really just needed more motivation to move forward and work on some packing. I thought recording would help me because I always feel more motivated whenever I am filming and updating you guys on what I'm trying to accomplish. So today's goal is to pack some orders. I currently have 71 open orders, and I did have a launch in the past week, so that's where majority of those orders came from, which you can tell was on August 18th. And I'm going to go ahead and get all of these packing slips printed to make my life easier. So while all of those labels print, I wanted to set the tone for this video. I was thinking about how hard it is to be sick when you run your own business, and I thought it would be cool to talk about all the pros and cons to running your own business. I think that's insightful, especially for people who are interested in starting their own business in the future. So we're going to talk about that today. The stack just finished printing and it is mighty. I'm going to bring you guys along while I pack and talk about all the pros and cons that I can think of in this moment, because I've wanted to make a video like this for a while. So let's start off with the cons so that we can end with the pros. So the first con that I'm experiencing right now is obviously feeling a little under the weather. So it really sucks when you get sick or you have an injury that prevents you from doing your work, because you can't just take PTO or call off work or get like workers' comp to deal with any of those things. You either have to take the time off and lose out on income while you're recovering, or just make it work and do some work while you are feeling sick or injured. So luckily for me, I haven't had any severe injuries in the past 3 to 4 years that has really impacted my ability to work. But something else that I noticed was that I was doing so much labor with my hands when I used to make stickers from home that I started to get a lot of wrist pain, and I couldn't figure out if it was just from the manual labor. But I also figured out over time that a big part of it was the fact that I was using my phone so much to edit things. So isn't that crazy? Like, the work increased my pain in different areas. I'm getting a little sidetracked, but those are the main things that have been causing pain over the years. This also means that when you want to take vacation, you have to decide if you are able to get offline entirely or if you're going to be working while you're away. It really depends on the structure of your business. What's really tricky about a business that relies a lot on social media for marketing is that a lot of people believe that if you are off social media for too long, that break will be really bad for your account. Of course, we don't really know the validity of that, but a lot of people do worry that if they disappear for a week or 2 weeks off of their account and they don't post anything across their social media, that it's going to affect their sales and their views negatively. So that's something to think about. I usually have to plan everything ahead of time. I have to get all my orders out in advance, knowing that I have a vacation coming up. And I also make an effort to have my videos pre-planned so that they post throughout the time that I'm gone. After many years of working on developing my business, I think is this focusing? I think I worked really hard and I found myself burning out. So I decided in the beginning of this year that I was going to have a vacation that was a lot longer and just more downtime. I know there are some businesses who are so good about this. They will close down their shop for a while or even months at a time to just recharge and work on art and drawing. I prefer to keep mine open so that I can continue to have sales come in and people can still place orders when they want. And I prefer to have extended processing times. And I put up a little notice so the customers know that my processing time is longer, but they can still place an order and I can still continue to accept sales even during my busier times. Like, let's say I'm away for a long weekend or I am in a really busy season, so I need a little bit more catch-up time. That's how I like to manage it, but everyone is different. One of the biggest inconveniences of working for yourself is figuring out your own health insurance. So I just have my own insurance through Marketplace. Usually the lower basic tiers of just Marketplace insurance is a lot worse than the ones that you can get through companies that are private insurance. At least that's what I've noticed with my experience. A lot of private insurance options are the same price, if not lower per month, and have lower deductibles and have more benefits included. So I have a very basic plan, but I'm paying like $450 a month for it, and that's just for my health insurance. That does not include dental or eye, and it also has like an $8,000 deductible. So I'd say the insurance piece is definitely one of the biggest things that people have to figure out when they work for themselves. Another big con to working for yourself is establishing your own work schedule routine. That's taken me a while to figure out, and if you guys have watched some of my recent videos, you know that I'm still trying to figure out a way to enhance my schedule to make sure that I'm exercising enough and like eating better, so many things, because a lot of times your work and personal life starts to blur when you work for yourself. Everything kind of ends up in this mixed up pile at home, especially if you work from home, because all your chores and tasks sort of end up overlapping, and there isn't anyone there telling you, hey, you need to be accountable for these things, otherwise there are going to be repercussions. It's really just you having to self-motivate and make sure that everything you need to get done is getting done for your business. And sometimes that can be so exhausting, especially when you have other responsibilities or you want to maintain hobbies, a social life, having time with your friends and family, all of that. It just becomes a huge juggling act because you have to find a way to separate when your work life ends and then when your personal life begins throughout the day and throughout the week. So that is super challenging, self-motivating to make sure you're getting all your tasks done is also a huge challenge. Since my work is specifically a stationery shop and I illustrate everything, it also requires me to have creative time to continue to draw in order to produce new products. So the business is highly reliant on me making new art, which can sound very daunting, especially if you end up with art block or you just have like an uninspired window where you don't really feel like creating. All of that is stuff you kind of have to work through and find a balance for as well. When I first started, I thought I wouldn't really ever experience art block because I always felt like I had too many ideas. And whenever people would ask me, what do you do for your art block? Like, do you have any strategies to overcome it? I didn't really relate to it because I never experienced art block before. So I figured maybe it'll just happen to me down the line, and maybe it's because I'm kind of a newer artist. I don't know. But what I realized after 3 years of working is that it's not the art block that actually impacted me. It's the stuff that you think is art block, but it's actually other things, like having emotional distress, physical like pain or fatigue, and all of these other things contribute to the art block because you're not in a good mental like health mode. So I realized that art block was a much bigger umbrella term, and I experienced a lot of changes over the past few years. I had to move. We had very ill family members. A lot of that just kind of continued over the past year, I guess 2 years. So I realized that a lot of my emotional and mental energy was going towards helping other people. So obviously that fed into me not feeling at my best in a creative mode. So I had to figure out all of that so that I could also continue my work too. I find that running this art business is actually the most stressful job that I've had, but it's also simultaneously the most rewarding job I've had. So yeah, typically if I was running my business on a bigger scale, I would be able to outsource a lot of my workload to other people who are more trained and specialized to do certain things. For example, if my budget was bigger, I would be able to hire someone for social media, maybe for graphic design, so that my website has different images that are seasonal and for sales, maybe even for email marketing. I also could hire people to help me with my inventory and packing. A lot of these elements could be standalone jobs at a bigger scale company, but for me, I am doing everything by myself, and that is very common for an art business like mine. And sometimes I do get help. Sometimes my boyfriend or my sister are able to help me pack, which is really helpful when things are super busy. But for the most part, I am working by myself, and I also need to know when to ask for help, which is also a challenge of its own, especially when you kind of get used to working by yourself. I would say a job of a small business owner, especially an artist like me, wouldn't exist in real life as a job description. There would be no way that a job would ask you to do all the things that one artist business owner is doing. And I think that's cool that we can kind of like dip our toes into so many things, but it's also very demanding because you are having to split your brain cells across so many different domains that you are not trained in. So that is something that I think a lot of people probably don't realize when they are starting a business. They're like, oh, like I have to be my own website designer, inventory organizer, artist, marketer, like everything, social media content creator. You have to wear so many hats. So I think that that is something that's really challenging to juggle. And as a side piece of advice, if you are in a similar position to me, or you will be in the future, you want to start thinking about what areas you excel in and what areas are holding you back, so that if you can outsource the work, try to do that. So I have a CPA who just takes care of all of my books and all of my taxes, and that's just something that I do not want to touch. So they take care of all of that for me, thank goodness. And I'm so glad I made that investment relatively early on, because it's a lot of work and it's something that I'm just not interested in doing. There are some elements of tax stuff that you will still have to do by yourself unless you want to outsource absolutely everything. So that is my next con. You have to manage all of the business administrative stuff. So all of the companies that I work with, I have to see if there are any like business contracts or partnerships available, programs, especially for printing companies. And you also need to have the proper tax forms. So if you are purchasing something for resale, then you don't have to pay taxes if that company accepts a reseller's permit or certificate. So you have to take a lot of extra steps to try to save your company money. And I also have to do sales tax remittance to states where I have met a threshold for how many sales I've had. So a lot of people don't know this, but if you run an online shop, once you hit a certain threshold per state based on their laws, you have to start collecting taxes for orders that come in from that state and remit it back to that state based on the schedule that they provide for you. A lot of them do it monthly, some are quarterly, and in some cases it's yearly. So I have to keep track of all of that throughout the year as well. And that is something new that I've had to figure out this year. And so far it's going pretty well, but I have this really extensive spreadsheet and schedule to organize everything so I don't forget anything. And if I choose to outsource that down the line, it's going to cost $50 to $75 per state filing. And that's for every single time the CPA or the person doing it for you has to submit. So even if you got no sales in the month or the quarter from a certain state, you still need to file it, and that fee will still be collected by whoever does it for you, if that makes sense. So right now, my business isn't like that big. So for now, I'm doing that on my own and seeing how it goes. It hasn't been too bad, but it is tedious, and it is something that you have to set a couple hours out of your schedule for that window of time to commit to. I have a combination of monthly ones and quarterly ones, so it's kind of sprinkled all over the place throughout the year. You also have to do all your own budgeting. So if you want to buy more equipment or upgrade something, if you want to invest in new products, you have to figure out if that's going to be cost effective for you, if that's a risk that you want to take. You have to assume all the risk. So whenever I'm working on new projects and products, I always have to think about the quantity that I'm purchasing and if it's something that I think people are going to enjoy. And it's always a shot in the dark because you don't ever really know how a product is going to do. There are products that I will think people are really going to like, and then it doesn't really meet my expectation. But then I'll have products that I don't think twice about, and then they'll do really well. So you don't know what to expect, and it does get a little bit easier to get an idea of what your customers and followers like over time, but there will always be a level of uncertainty that you have to be comfortable with. Another thing that comes to mind that can be a pro or a con depending on your personality is that if you run a solo small business, you will be alone for the most part day to day, and it is way less socialization. So I know for some people that could be a dream come true, but in other cases you might feel understimulated from a social standpoint. And as an introvert, I like working by myself for the most part, but I do feel like I need some kind of social circle outside of work, and that's something that I've been working on because it's so much harder to meet new people when you're older and out of school. And then on top of that, I don't meet anyone new since I work by myself. Pros and cons. I'd say the next con or barrier to starting a business like mine is that you have to be really comfortable doing a lot of research. I think that that's one of the hardest things. I get a lot of questions from people asking me, how did you get started? And where did you find all this information about manufacturers or how to make stickers from home? It's just a lot of research and trial and error, which is why it's really hard to respond to all of those comments. And I feel like that's why it's so amazing that there are people out there who want to just coach other business owners. And those are the people that you want to find if you want a little bit more detailed support. And I also think that all of that is supplemental to you having the right mindset. You really have to be okay with spending a lot of time on Google looking up things, trying to figure out how things work. You need to have a lot of patience and kind of just be able to wrap around and come back to something that you're trying to figure out. I remember when I first got my Cricut, I could not get that thing to work. It was not cooperating, and I had to mess with so many settings. I had to read so many Reddit forums and talk to customer service, watch videos of other creators showing how they do it, and eventually I figured it out with the help from my boyfriend and all of those resources. So we were just trial and erroring through so many buttons, so many options to get the right cut line and the right paper, all of that. And at the end of the day, it's all going to be based on your preference too. So you might find that what works for someone else isn't really going to work for you. So it's a lot of testing things out, researching, and that applies to all your manufacturers. It applies to all the communication you're going to have with those manufacturers. Just finding the manufacturer isn't enough. You're going to have to figure out if they're a good fit for you on a customer service level. And there's going to be a lot of back and forth sometimes with emails and making sure that the product you have in mind is what they can provide for you. So the proofing process can be a lot, and the list just kind of goes on and on. So you do have to have that mental preparation to communicate with a lot of different people, and a lot of it for my work is over email and chat. Research is going to impact your business in every single way. So even these little things that you're seeing that are all situated and done, it took me many rounds to figure out how to find a way to display my stickers in an organized fashion and save as much space as possible so that I can stock as many stickers as I can on these shelves. Same thing with these bins and just everything. It's a process of continuing to improve everything and work with what you have. And luckily, I'm not doing this like 100% alone. My boyfriend really likes to organize things. So he printed all of these bins for me. He 3D printed them, and we picked the colors together and went shopping and everything. We tested out the sizes to see what works the best. And eventually he just ended up printing all of this for me. And that's something that I probably would have spent a lot of time figuring out on my own if I didn't have help. And a lot of times business owners are doing things by themselves. It is a lot to think about. If you have some help, that's great. But a lot of times it's just me researching a lot of things and testing things out. All of my packing materials took a while to figure out, and I'm always trying to improve on making packing really simple, but also an experience. I don't want to have a lot of frills and plastic, but I do want it to be simple, cute, and functional. So I'm always trying to find new paper products to package them in. And it can be a really long and grueling process. The thing is, no matter what you think you've finished doing, things will always need change and adaptation as other things change. So you might get all of your manufacturers and packing products down to an art, and then one of those companies will change their prices or no longer make a certain product, and that will have to make you shift gears and adapt along the way. So working for yourself also requires a lot of flexibility. And my biggest piece of advice is to set aside time for research, whether that's market research for what people are interested in right now. That also means sometimes going outside of your home, whether it's having a cafe date, a small outing, or vacation. I find that all to be a part of building inspiration for your work, especially if you're in a creative field also. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're gonna move on to the pros of running your own art small business. I feel like there are so many, and I know that the cons probably sounded a little overwhelming, but I think that the way pros and cons work is kind of like a yin and yang. There's always a pro to the con and a con to the pro, and they usually balance each other out. You just need to find the right balance for yourself within it, if that makes any sense. So for pros, The first thing that comes to mind is that you are your own boss, and that is something I truly love. I don't have to report back to anyone. If I want to take a vacation or take a random day of the week off, I can flex my schedule and move things around and know that I can just take control over whatever I'd like to do for the day. So sometimes if I don't get to do an errand over the weekend, especially things like grocery shopping when weekends are really busy, I will just shift that into the week. And I'll be like, you know what, on Wednesday, I'm just gonna take the afternoon off to run to Costco and run to Kroger and get some groceries. Or like yesterday, I took my dog to the vet and it was a last minute appointment that was available. And I was able to take it without taking a second guess about my schedule. I didn't have to call anyone and try to see if I can get my schedule rearranged and make sure I could take time off from work. So that is a huge plus. Earlier this year, I actually took 2 trips and they ended up being very close to each other just because of the flight deals. And I was so grateful that I was able to just do both, because normally if you had to worry about PTO or taking time off, you have to space everything out. So that was also a huge plus. Almost forgot Megan's little thank you card. Being your own boss is really nice. If you have any ideas on how you want to run things, you don't have to worry about trying to do it the way you want. You can just do things however you want, whether that's how you organize your inventory, your business, how you want your website to look, how you run anything. Everything is just up to you. So you have so much flexibility and so much power over how you decide to do things. The con of that is that you just need to know how to structure that and how to self-motivate and do it all. So that's the balance there. As a creative person, I really enjoy having a lot of creative freedom, especially because a lot of the products that I want to make are things that don't really exist in the market. Obviously, stationery products do, but I always wanted to make silly and snarky products. So you don't see designs like that out there where it's like, oh, this person is just creating things with a bunch of swear words on it and like a lot of snarky, sassy things. Like that's not stuff that you'll see at a local department store. So I love that I get to do that and not have to question it. You can make whatever you want and it can be silly, it could be punny. I had all these silly ideas of making punny post-it notes, and I made a toast-it note, a ghost-it note, and a roast-it note. And I just have the clearance to draw and create and produce whatever I want on whatever product. One of the biggest pros that I really enjoy about running my own business is connecting with a lot of people online and building a community. It's really fun, and I think that there's something very wholesome and real about it. I have made so many friends who I've never met in real life by doing this kind of work, and it's really fun to be able to share art and things that I'm enjoying making and doing and find other people who are like-minded, who enjoy the same things as me. I also have gotten a chance to develop so many new hobbies and interests through you guys over the years. I got back into leisurely reading, I started junk journaling, and these are all creative endeavors that aren't directly related to my source of work and income, but stuff that I can continue to share and build a community around. So that has been really enjoyable, and it keeps me inspired in a lot of ways. This is Maria's order, and it's so cute because they got all of the Horrors Persist But So Do I products and the t-shirt, so they got a full set. The other pro that is really, really nice is that you can work from home if it's a business that allows you to work from a home office and you have that kind of space, and that saves a lot of time and money if you are able to avoid having to pay for a rental space, and you also get to avoid traffic and driving. So I live in Metro Atlanta. The traffic can get really bad. I'm sure a lot of you guys who commute to work know that feeling, and that is something that I don't have to do anymore. So there are a lot of times where I'm at home the whole week, and the only time I'm out is to take my dog on her walks. And the next time I get in my car, I'll be like, whoa. I have this like moment where I'm like, it's been a while since I've been in the car, and it feels really foreign and strange to be driving sometimes when my schedule happens to line up that way and I've been home for several days. Another thing that I really like is knowing that I'm building a brand. I don't think I've felt this way when I first started, but after some time passed and the collection of work that I drew and created continued to grow, it felt more and more special knowing that I made all of this and that I drew all of these, and I have all these distinct memories of where I was in my life or what inspired me to do it, and I remember all those moments. And because all of my work is on social media for my marketing, I also have this cool diary, documentary almost, of everything that I've accomplished and done for my small business, Gem and Cozy. So I think that's really neat. Sometimes I'll look back at an old video and it's such a strange and special experience thinking, I remember drawing that. I remember what my office looked like back then. Wow, my inventory was so different. It was so much smaller when I was starting out. And you get to just see your progress like that just by looking at your work and your office and reflecting on your older videos. And I think that's really special. I think there's a lot of room to scale your business to a bigger level and make more income depending on the type of business you have. Even though I have to assemble and pack all of my orders, I do find it really comforting that I can leave my online shop open when I am sick, when I am on vacation, and I can still get sales that I can pack when I'm ready. So that is a huge plus. It's a lot of work and a lot of setup, but I am so grateful to be able to run a business like this from home. And it just comes with so much flexibility and creativity. Once you get more organized and get your systems down, a lot of things start to flow better also. Last but not least, while I pack Glenda's gargantuan order, this is their second open order right now, I really appreciate all of the skills that you develop while running a business. The amount of transferable life skills, organizational skills, social skills that you gain from running a business is amazing. You end up working on a lot of social skills that you never really thought about, and I feel like over the years I've become a lot more succinct and clear with my communication because I've had to send out so many emails and I want to make sure people understand what I'm trying to say. And I think when I was younger, I used to feel really nervous about sending out questions and emails, and I found myself becoming more verbose and writing in a more roundabout way in order to try to come off nicer. And now I feel like I'm a lot better at just condensing my words and being more direct. And it's not mean, it's actually a lot clearer to understand. And oh my God, these are so shiny. I just had a crow moment. Woo! This is so pretty. These are new, by the way. I just had one of those, it's one of those skills that you develop over time when you have to communicate with people over and over again, but it saves a lot of time. You become more efficient at sending people emails. You spend less time crafting them and more confident and self-assured about what you're doing. And that has been such a gift for me. I'm so glad that I got to really finesse those skills. I think that's it for today's video. I had a lot of fun reflecting on all the things that I really appreciate about being a business owner, and then also the things that make it more challenging. Even though we're calling it a pros and cons list, I don't really think that the cons list are actually things that are negative. They're more or less things that you need to be aware of and mindful about. My phone ran out of memory, so I didn't get to show you guys finishing packing Glenda's order, but here it is. Here's all the mail that I packed, and we are down to 49 open orders. I'm gonna wrap up this video by sharing that even though we made a pros and cons list, I don't truly think that the cons are negative things about running a business. I see it more like a guideline for us to be aware of what to expect and to be more mindful about what areas we may need more help in or what areas we feel more prepared in. So I hope that my list of cons does not scare away people. Everyone's experience is going to be different depending on how much help they have, as well as their setup and the type of business they run. And everyone is just going to find different ways to make it work. Thanks so much for hanging out with me as I pack orders. If you are an aspiring artist or business owner, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will see you guys next time.